Welcome to this week's Ruck'n Maul. Sam Bruce alongside Greg Growden. We're going to kick it off with the Brumbies this week. They've played a few different styles in attack so far, but the big one for you, Greg, has been their defence.
Yeah, the Brumbies have really been interesting to watch this year. We've had the years with Jake White, which was kickball or whatever, but this year, and even late last year, you notice they've evolved into a far more entertaining, more interesting team. First up, we've discovered that the kicking's been restricted, but now you've seen the defence has really proven. So it's shown what an important asset Peter Ryan, their former Brumbies player and a rugby league representative, has done to them, because their defence last week against the Rebels was outstanding. It reminded me a lot of the Waratahs last year, who's one of the main key reasons. I know they got all the raps because of their attack. Their defence was so crucial last year. And the same thing is happening with the Brumbies. But what is going to be interesting now to see what happens now that Jesse Mogg, who was so crucial to Jake White's plan in kicking everything, what happens with him returning to the team? He came on as replacement last week. You notice that he had a kick, and that's obviously his first instinct. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because Mogg will be used either off the bench or in the start, whether they say to him, okay, stop it. Because you've noticed already, Nick White, he's not doing those chip over the tops, which used to drive us crazy. Yep. So keep an eye on that. Another interesting issue that, Sam, you brought up in your column this week is about the rolling mauls and how teams are defending against them. And this is going to be a major issue. So explain yourself.
For me, this is probably the biggest issue facing World Rugby going into the World Cup. We've already seen in the Six Nations, and a little surprisingly in Super Rugby, how important the rolling maul is going to be and how much the coaches are actually looking to use it. The first instance last weekend in round 3 of Super Rugby was over there in Bloemfontein, where the Blues were using this tactic of disengaging from the line-out. Now, it's something that worked for them quite well against the Stormers, and something we actually here at ESPN tried to clear up ahead of the season with Lyndon Bray. Now, he said that if they disengaged, there should be a scrum awarded to the defending side. They got done by a penalty from Aussie ref Rowan Hoffman last week, and the Cheetahs kicked a penalty to win the game. So there just seems to be a lot of uncertainty there for me. You
can understand why the coaches are looking at different ways to counter this rolling maul. You're right, it's really become a major factor the last few years. And I remember talking to Eddie Jones years ago, who used to get exasperated by the rolling maul and saying it's basically an obstruction. And the infuriation that, and you brought it up in your article about that the aim of the game is to be contesting that ball. Yep. And when you've got 5 or 6 players in front of the person holding the ball, I find that a very hazy. Look, I like watching rolling mauls, but I still a bit edgy about the whole structure of it and think, well, it's not really a proper contest. So I can see why teams are trying to contest it, and I can see why it's going to be a major issue, because you can understand why teams are thinking, oh, well, let's think smart here. If we don't contest it at the line out, it is an obstruction. But your point is right. The referees have got to get a consistent situation here. For them to say, oh, we've talked to the coaches and we've asked them to do this and that, that's not enough. They've really got to sit down now and tell us, with 6 or 7 months out of the World Cup, what goes on with the rolling mauls, because you are right. In England, during the World Cup, this is going to be a major factor.
And of course, Italy sunk Scotland with a penalty try on the bell from a rolling maul as well. So one to keep an eye on throughout the season. James O'Connor, what have you made of him at the Reds so far, playing at number 10?
Early days. I thought he began pretty well his first game last week. He was put in the deep end, and he's been put in the deep end before, because a couple of years ago he did play there for the Wallabies and got criticised enormously. So you've got to give him some sympathy. He will get better. But the point is, that won't be his position in the test team straight up. When the Wallabies come through, I can only see him on a wing, maybe his backup fullback to Folau. But the good thing about it is that with Australia lacking number 10s, at World Cup time, though Connor's had a lot of grounding now, he may be a backup, maybe someone we can use in a midweeker or something like that. So, but still, a long way to go, but you can understand why the Reds are using him, because they've got no one else.
While we're on number 10s, we'll jump across to Tasman and talk about the big issue in New Zealand. Dan Carter, he's probably slipped down in the fly half pecking order over there behind Beauden Barrett, Aaron Cruden and Colin Slade. Is he going to make the World Cup?
At the moment, you say probably not, which is so bizarre. At the moment, you're looking at him as probably number 4, and he was hobbling a few weeks ago. Now, if that's the case, what the Australian Rugby Union should do as our biggest priority is going through Daniel Carter's heritage, get on Ancestry.com, see if there's an Australian link there somewhere, and if there is, Get him over here, because how good would he be? Aussie Dan playing in the green and gold, September, October. Who knows? Could be a third World Cup coming our way.
First we had Dingo Deans. It could be Aussie Dan next. You heard it here first.